very warm welcome to all our audience to this webcast from Future Market Insights on intelligent packaging adoption. Who are the frontrunners? And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, because like I was just saying, I know for a fact that there are so many people from across the world who have registered for this. I don't know if you're joining at this late hour, but nevertheless, a very warm welcome to all of you. And I am excited to be moderating this wonderful panel of speakers. And please join me in welcoming Tyler Chaffo, who is Global Sustainability Manager at Avery Dennison. We have Chandni Jha, who is a research consultant at Future Market Insights for food and beverage. We have Saurabh Sharma, who is General Manager Research for Healthcare at Future Market Insights. And we have Yash Pathak, Client Partner for Consumer Markets at Future Market Insights. And myself, I'm Aditi Basu. I'm Head of Marketing at Future Market Insights, and I'm your moderator for this session. Now, for those of you who are new to our webcast sessions, just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of this, that Future Market Insights is an SOMA certified market research and consulting firm. And we have been partnering global enterprises in mapping trends, in analyzing industries, and in growth consulting partnership. A very quick, a few things for the audience. This session will be for 1 hour, and our audience is muted throughout this time. But of course, you will have questions for our speakers. So please put your questions in the questions box that you see on your control panel, and we will take your questions at the end of the session. And for anybody whose questions are not being answered because of time, be rest assured that we will get in touch with you over an email after the webcast. Also, this whole session is being recorded, so you will receive a copy of the recording to watch at your convenience later. You will also get a copy of the slides that are being shown in the webcast today. Right? All right, so I would like to kick this off with a quick recap from our last talk show, which was in November last year, where also our topic was about the rise of intelligent packaging. And one thing which we discussed at length was the fact that intelligent packaging is probably not just your next level packaging. It is probably a revolution in the making, because it has the potential to transform our economy. It has the potential to solve a lot of global crises that we are facing today. And there was this one particular slide that caught the attention of our viewers in the last talk show. And I think I'm sharing my screen. You can see my screen, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so I will just move to that slide which I was talking about. It's this, which caught the attention of our viewers in our last session, which is a product growth life cycle curve for intelligent packaging solutions on one side, and the adoption for end-use industries on the other. Now, while intelligent packaging is gradually, going mainstream into all the end-use industries, but there are three which we will delve deeper into in this session, which is food and beverages, consumer products, and healthcare. The main reason being that probably the business value or the business impact of intelligent packaging is the highest in these three industries. And that's why, together with our speakers, over the next 1 hour, we'll look into each of these three industries in terms of what is the application of IP in these sectors, what kind of technologies are seeing rapid adoption, and some of the winning case studies from these markets. So moving on to our first industry, which is food and beverages, which of course is clearly like one of the leading in terms of adoption of IP, like we saw in the previous slide. And we have Tyler Chaffo joining us from Avery Dennison, which is a leading material sciences company. So Tyler, you have been working with a lot of F&B brands, right, in the IP space. What, according to you, is the main impact of IP in food and beverages? And could you share some winning examples from this market?
Sure, absolutely. I would certainly be more than happy to. So I think One of the things that's really interesting about the food space is it is a very large industry, and it's an industry that has typically been a laggard as relates to technology and also sustainability. So if you consider food waste as a challenge, food waste has been determined to be effectively solving food waste is determined to be one of the #1 solutions to solving climate change, which makes sense when considering that the food supply chain accounts for 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions, with some recent estimates suggesting that it's more like 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. And furthermore, food waste is about 10% of that figure. So just food alone that is wasted is 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And if you think about the benefits that could exist if you solve those from both an economic, a social, and environmental perspective, the numbers are really staggering. The ability to feed deserving populations that are food insecure populations, the cost of goods sold benefit that you have, and then also the environmental reduction that you'll see in terms of climate, water use, land use, things like that. And so there's a lot of opportunities where we're seeing intelligent packaging really come to the forefront with this. And I think it's first to think about packaging in general, because packaging really was adopted in the food space historically to reduce food waste. But now looking at it from more of an intelligent or smart packaging solution, but even looking at just standard plastic wrap, a great study was done that found a plastic wrap on a cucumber is about 1% of the total environmental footprint of that item, because the plastic helps the cucumber last longer. So the total benefit from preventing food waste is actually 5 times greater than the environmental impact. And furthermore, we're starting to see adoptions in terms of intelligent packaging, most notably being things like RFID. RFID has been kind of shown to, and sensors been shown to reduce food waste anywhere from 5 to 7%. So we're seeing retailers really start to adopt food waste. Specifically, if you look at developed countries, food waste really accounts for anywhere between 20 to 50% within the retail environment, and there's a strong ROI there as well. And so things like restaurants have a 7-to-1 ROI in reducing food waste. We're working with a variety of different customers across the retail sector with different solutions around intelligent packaging. So things like providing deeper transparency, showing products that are soon to expire and enabling that donation, waste labeling and prep, cold chain sensors, the ability to use pricing or ability to use packaging to enable dynamic pricing. And really what this all means is it provides the ability for retailers to have improved decision making now that food that would wasting isn't going to waste. Diving deeper into RFID, I think, is critical. RFID and really IoT is kind of listed as the #1 solution to be adopted in the next 5 years for the food 4.0 technologies. It's being used in places like South Korea to really track food waste. We're seeing it used really here in the US as well for reasons like product freshness. So how can you use it to reduce dwell time, product optimization, so enhancing product distribution with accurate data, the ability to track your waste. So how can you refine product management, decrease transit time, really waste tracking, things like that. These serve to cut costs anywhere from 2 to 5%, which if you're a grocery retailer, that can have a significant impact on your margins, and upwards of 20% waste reduction through RFID. The ability to now connect and use intelligent packing to also show inventory visibility. So it provides things like enhanced demand planning. It also gives you the ability to do expiry date and really mark down traffic or tracking. So some of that dynamic pricing. And also the other big trend here is around recall management. There is a recall event almost daily here in the US across produce in different areas. So the ability to identify through intelligent packaging the products that are affected, remove those while also not impacting the bulk of the products. And so an example being, we have a product recall on lettuce, through things like intelligent packaging, through RFID, with blockchain on a cloud, we're able to identify the affected products and remove those without removing any of the other products. And this can be really helpful when you consider the amount of food that gets wasted through recalls. There's also a strong component of engaging the consumer and really consumer information. So accurate product information that can help consumers reduce their waste. It also improves their consumer trust if they know where the product's coming from. and also the ability to do authentication and product visibility from farm to fork. So providing that transparency into where that product is coming from, all the way from the field to the consumer, really helps to support, and really the intelligent packaging is the vessel that does that.
Indeed, and some of these figures that you mentioned, are startling, but they are true, and that really shows, what is the kind of impact that food waste has in terms of a social or environmental perspective, but also for business losses, and the fact that IP has the potential to solve that crisis. It speaks volumes about what could be the market for IP in food and beverages now or in future. And are there any, let's say, winning examples of companies in food and beverages who are doing this right, in terms of adoption of IP? They're really able to combat food waste through IP. Like any examples from F&B or even from Avery Dennison, for example?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great examples that are out there in the market right now. There's there's examples in grocery. There's examples in quick service restaurant. Retailers like Subway using AI and coupled that with packaging, then to say, how do we reduce the amount of product on shelf while right sizing inventory has really proven to be a pretty big savings there. And there's also, to your point, there is a big trickle down effect from cost and things like labor efficiency. So if you're using intelligent packaging now and you're right sizing your inventory, now you're able to better deploy your labor to do other more value added tasks throughout a retail environment. So now your labor, as opposed to taking the inventory of products or managing the expiration date, can be deployed to connect with consumers. And so the intelligent packaging is really being that connective point back to it. And there's a number of great examples, some that are, not necessarily public yet, but I think, look at this space, because you'll see that there will be a lot of really examples that become public, I'll say, over the next year or so. And that's because this has been such a critical issue for retailers. And it's an issue that they're still getting their hands around in terms of quantifying the impact. They're still quantifying the impact from a dollar perspective, but even from an environmental perspective. And the ROIs and the impact, as this slide shows, really speaks for itself. That there's a strong business case with solving food waste, but if you factor in the environmental impact, the social impact, then it really becomes staggering. And I think, the amount of investment that we've seen within the intelligent packaging space around this has really accelerated. And it's accelerated throughout the pandemic. Has been widely publicized shortages of food and materials, and so how can you use intelligent packaging to really reduce these shortages and really ensure that we have a steady supply of products coming into stores?
Yeah, and what you just said some time back is that it's not just saving costs from the food waste perspective, but also probably throughout the entire supply chain. At various stages, there will be, let's say, cost optimization, cost savings that will happen because of more and more IP being adopted here. So that's really interesting, Tyler. Thank you so much for that. And just we would also want to see what is the commercial aspect, or what is the total market looking like for IP in F&B. And we have with us Chandni. So Chandni, you have been analyzing this market in terms of which are the technologies, and what is their impact, or what is their adoption like now or in future. Would you like to throw some light on, what are your top takeaways from the survey or the research that you're doing?
Yes, Aditi. Just like Tyler mentioned, there is no doubt that for food and industry across the value chain, how to combat food waste is our #1 priority. And while there may be various other methods to get to that, but intelligent packaging is what most of the food manufacturers are eyeing at as an answer. If we have to look at what are the top technologies that are of strategic priority for food and beverage manufacturers, they would of course be all those technologies that are made to maintain the integrity of the food inside, be it tracking, tracing, or monitoring the freshness of food. These technologies help in tracing the history of the product and the locations as well, making it possible to monitor the market performance as well as all other potential issues. These two technologies will continue to see mass adoption in next 10 years. In addition, I would like to say technologies that enables consumer experience will also see high adoption. A classic example of that is Tetra Pak. Tetra Pak launched connected packaging in 2019, which were used to transform milk and juice cartons into an interactive information channels and also data carriers. This was 2 years back. Now imagine how much of innovation is happening in this industry now.
Okay, I think.
So all these technologies have various applications across the food and beverage domain. But, sorry?
No, Chandni, go on, because I think your
Yeah.
connection was a bit breaking in between. Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's
okay.
perfect.
So all this technology, I was saying, all these technologies, these applications in food and beverage industry. But in next couple of slides, I would want to delve a bit deeper into how food industry are using these technologies to combat food waste as well as consumer engagement. We all know quality and safety are the two most important requirements in food manufacturing and supply, which is the reason for high demand for advanced sensor technologies on packaging. With these sensor technologies, the consumer can easily recognize which food is best and safe to eat and which should be thrown away. New advances in different forms of time temperature indicators and monitors includes all those devices that give visual and straightforward summary of the history of the product. A key example is a California-based dairy farm, I would say. Now, the dairy farm is using TTI, which is helping the farm to collect the information throughout the supply chain. Now, with ease to use and smartphone readable time temperature sensor, the dairy farm owner could access the distribution condition of e-commerce delivered bottles of its perishable camel milk product. So, moving to the next slide, this is a glimpse of all the case studies for the brands who are using intelligent packaging for consumer engagement and all other factors. The key technology that is being used in this space is NFC. Now, Nestle introduced QR cap closure solutions in Vietnam to appeal the Gen Z and strengthen their brand loyalty. Coca-Cola introduced a pour by phone feature in 2020, which uses QR codes to provide around 200 drink options. Similarly, Kraft Heinz uses NFC-based technology to boost its consumer engagement. Now, how this is helping Kraft Heinz? Let's assume a consumer walks into a store, be Walmart, and he picks up a pack of Kraft Heinz singles. Now, with the help of NFC technology, he can visit a particular website where he or she can fill his details and participate in contest. They can have access to various recipes. They can have coupons. They can have rewards. Another example of NFC is the California wine brand Boyan. Now, Boyan is urging shoppers to tap the cap with a smartphone to educate themselves about its wines. The NFC technology used directs the mobile user to a website with information about the brand, its history, and wine pairing. In the world where the consumers are always on their mobile devices, looking for new and exciting opportunities to engage with the products and the brands, the NFC-powered intelligent packaging is an exciting idea for them. Now, talking about what are the growth propellers of the industry? Adoption of intelligent packaging in food and beverage industry will continue in all the areas that I mentioned earlier. But what is interesting is to note how the huge spending and huge demand of ready-to-eat and ready-to-cook food products and the riding e-commerce business will drive intelligent packaging sales. Now we all know how ready-to-eat food industry will grow in next 10 years. Of course, the shift is more towards vegan products, nutritional products, or organic products, but that means the packaging need is also evolving and growing, which is expected to create a demand of 2x times for intelligent packaging in next 10 years. The other growth propeller is the thriving e-commerce business. The thriving e-commerce business towards intelligent packaging, the global e-commerce business industry is expanding with the emergence of intelligent packaging. It is used in all the stages of e-commerce. The features including easy to track the product from manufacturer's facility, warehouse, delivery partners till the final consumers, which is about to create a latent demand of a billion for IP industry.
Great. And this slide is especially, for me, it's quite strong because you really talk about two segments which will propel the demand for IP. And for RTE food market, we're actually seeing that kind of evolution happening in the food, in the product format. And like you rightly said, giving that nutrition, the vegan, the organic option is going to be the most important. But what it also means for behind the scene packaging is that the packaging needs to deliver that functionality, right, to the consumer, to deliver that claim to the consumer. So that obviously means that IP will also evolve along with the RTE food market. So thank you so much, Chandni, for those insights. And we'll move to the next industry, which is healthcare, which also is just right behind, let's say, food and beverage in terms of the growth curve that we saw in the first slide. And we have with us Saurav Sharma. Saurav, you've been analyzing this market, the IP market, from a healthcare lens. What is the dynamics of this market? Would you say it's different from IP, the challenges, or what we can solve with IP in healthcare?
Hi Aditi, hello everyone. Yes, every industry has its own challenges, every unique pain points. There's no difference about it. But if we talk about healthcare industry definitely sells products, but those products are actually meant to cater to that kind of a population where exactly we should be catering about their saving their lives or prolonging their life duration and stuff like that. So yes, definitely it has its own challenges. On the social side of things, we are actually facing massive economic concerns. Aging societies in developed countries, societies with high indices of diabetes and obesity, healthcare associated infection, and definitely these days, ever increasing antibiotic resistance and increasing inequality and shifting populations. Rightly pointed by Tyler, yes, on the technological side of things, our present is actually marked by increasing computing power, increasing connectivity, big data, artificial intelligence, and instant communication. Healthcare industry deals with multiple issues. We have just a few of these issues mentioned out here, of which medical adherence is just one of it. Patient medical adherence is actually key to any successful treatment, and not only monetary losses to the country's healthcare costs, which are actually huge in billions and billions of dollars, but medication non-adherence can also lead to loss of precious human lives. With one study suggesting nearly 200,000 of premature deaths only in Europe. But yes, we have a solution. Intelligent packaging has many applications which can help improve patient experiences, such as patient interaction like dosing advice, automatic recognition of medication by injection systems, and also in process optimization in internal logistics. And one of the key, which actually is key to any organization, brand protection. So intelligent packaging is no longer just about tracking and verification. Intelligent packaging can actually support improved patient adherence through products such as smart pill packs and smart pill boxes. These smart pills and smart pill boxes, they actually record tablets when they are removed, so that the patient compliance to a particular course of treatment can actually be monitored objectively. The concept can actually be extended to make drug delivery packs that prompt the user when to take a medication at an appropriate time. These provide clear instructions by voice, for example, on a scrolling display in a large font. So now coming to the drug piracy and counterfeiting, this is something which the healthcare industry is, this is not new to the industry actually, and the industry has been dealing with it since long. Counterfeit medications are fake and of substandard quality drugs that actually pose considerable risk to people due to contamination, lack of active ingredients, or incorrect dosage of active ingredients. With more and more people, especially during the time of COVID, and we are still in that same situation, people have started to prefer buying online, even medications. So the market for counterfeit medications is not just thriving, but has become the most lucrative of all the global trade in falsified and illegally copied goods, and netting in billions and billions of dollars annually. Even according to WHO, there are almost 10% of drugs which are fake, which are counterfeit in circulation across the world, and almost 50% of drugs sold online are actually fake, according to WHO. Not only are these falsified medications putting millions of people in harm's way, they can potentially cause death. According to WHO estimates, again, 1 million of people, they lose their life due to falsified medications. That's really area of concern, I must say. With regards to supply chain losses, it is estimated that biopharma loses to the tune of nearly 35 billion, and that too in just wastage of vaccines, blood and tissue, and other drugs, and just owing to transportation and storage conditions. Not only that, but most of the pharmaceutical companies have stopped trusting their internal data in tracking supply chain. There are various solutions offered by intelligent packaging, which can help transform the pharmaceutical supply chain, can provide information to improve transparency, reducing waste, and empowering improved supply chain management. So yes, definitely, intelligent packaging can definitely help a lot. Moving on to the next slide. This slide basically details few of the impacts which are depicted out here when certain kind of a company has adopted certain technology and what kind of a benefit they would have had. And yes, some of the most prominent technologies in focus are the ones that secure supply chain integrity in order to ensure consumers have access to safe and authentic medicines and medication devices. The investment actually needed to overall supply chain operations in order to digitize them can be an opportunity for them to modernize their businesses by leveraging existing technologies. Not only will serialization and track and trace capabilities help brands thwart counterfeiters, they can be utilized to create more value by creating new channels for revenue generation. And actually, a brand that has secured its supply chain integrity has actually secured its reputation. And a brand that has exemplary reputation for going an extra mile to protect its products from the clutches of counterfeiters, and as a result protect the health of millions of customers, ensures this place as a market leader for the years to come. Indeed, RFID tags have automatically prevented, just an example which is cited out here, they've actually prevented wrong dosing to just one type of anesthetic being delivered. A similar kind of electronic health, I'm sorry, a similar kind of electronic handshake is used elsewhere to ensure that single-use catheters, radio frequency probe covers, and other items which are meant to be used just once are not used twice, and the instrument will not function if any attempt is made to use them improperly. Indeed, there's a company in the US who is integrating RFID labeling technology into packaging elements like boxes and blisters, envelopes, zip ties, safety bags, tapes, and thereby creating a tamper-proof barrier around or inside the packaging. So yes, definitely, the demand for intelligent packaging will grow further with strong gains expected even from time temperature indicator labels based on growing cost competitiveness and heightened presence of temperature sensitive drugs. So yes, uh, moving on to the next two slides. These two slides will actually give you just a depiction of a few collaborations in the market uh, and a few launches in the next one. So yes, intelligent packaging is a solution actually, this which requires collaboration amongst a number of organizations with packagers, consumer industry, product manufacturers, a small universe of technology providers, retailers, so on and so forth. So these strategic collaborations and consolidations are key to any business success, and any businesses all over the world are adapting to meet the new demand for security of shipped goods and products. Through these strategic consolidations, firm actually try and bring secure, verified supply chain transparency to brands and gives customers more value and more possibilities to continue and adapt to successfully to the market. The deep integration across various solutions, I would say, will rapidly increase the time to value for projects focused on product transparency and consumer trust. So yes, the next slide gives you just an example of few of the recent launches.
Yeah, and I know, Saurabh, you also want to talk about the regulations as well, because that plays a very important role. But what I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned again some of the statistics in the beginning were like really startling, similar to that of F&B in terms of the real pressing need for IP, especially like counterfeit, and with 50% medicines online sold as counterfeit. That's really startling. So, will these regulations in healthcare also encourage the adoption of IP in healthcare, you think?
Yes, certainly, Aditi. Indeed, there's a every industry is somewhere down the line interconnected. Even food and beverages can also be connected to healthcare. Probably around 9,000 of people they lose their lives just because of any foodborne diseases. So yes, coming back to your question, in cases of fake medications, I mean, if they start to flood the market, and if that thing goes public, it's actually the name of the company that would come under fire. So, pharmaceutical traceability driven by the Drug Supply Chain Security Act in the US and the European Falsified Medication Directive, which actually demands that what is on the label is actually on the package, and the label meets the required certification in also driving the intelligent packaging market. The European Union's FMD is a prime example with its primary focus on identification and serialization of individual packs of medications. The regulation, which was issued, this was actually issued in 2016, establishes mandatory unique identifiers on individual packs comprising of a product code, a serial number based on randomized algorithm, a reimbursement number according to the countries which the medication is marketed in, a batch number, and even an expiry date. So yes, definitely, regulations are something which are encouraging the adoption of intelligent packaging in healthcare. Indeed, in the developed world has a very good incremental opportunity in next decade, probably in a couple of billions, I would say, especially Europe and US. And the developing nations, which are actually from the supply side as well, they are also adopting to this definite requirement, which is actually meant to cater to a longer duration and till the time new thing comes up. Yes, to cater to a lot of customers. So they are also adopting to this change from the demand nations. So yes, definitely, regulations are encouraging to this intelligent packaging in healthcare.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Saurabh. And before we move to the next industry, I just wanted to tell our audience, please send in your questions. I can see a few that have come, so I will just take one question now. And I love my audience today, 98% attentiveness. Amazing. So thank you so much. And I see the first question that is coming up, and it's for you, Tyler. So maybe let's just address it here. We
Sure.
have heard the term traceability used for a while now, and we have started hearing about transparency. How are they different? and what are the benefits to consumers and to the business?
Yeah, I think in general, I think it's a great question. In my view, it's a precursor. So traceability is a precursor to transparency. It's a critical and necessary step. With RFID, we used to talk about track and trace as it relates to providing supply chain visibility, but now we're seeing that evolve into transparency. And the nuance there is, rather than it being a B2B tool, it's now become a B2C tool. So that decision making, that visibility is now being able to transcend to the consumers. So consumers are now able to connect to the product, understand where it's come from, how it's made, ultimately where it can go when it's reached the end of its useful life. So when we think about things like packaging, that becomes increasingly critical. But even before that, when you look at the ability to create a digital supply chain twin, as an example, a large F&B brand created a digital map of its supply chain to map transport flows and products as it moves through it. They reduced their cost by 10%, but they also reduced their greenhouse gas emissions in a similar neighborhood. So the ability to have deeper levels of transportation is critical. Things like authentication, but also regulatory. When you think about brands showing their supply chains, verifying where products are coming from, there's legislation happening now in places like Germany that basically needs to determine where products have come from. So able to use intelligent packaging to provide that connection is critical. Sourcing from certain regions, but also confirming, is it made sustainably? There's anti-greenwashing legislation that's out there. I think there's untold business benefits as well. Being able to provide transparency into your operations is critical. Obviously, we've seen throughout the pandemic the issues with having products that are disjointed between basically supply and demand, and how can you provide that connection point? And we've seen companies that have enabled their inventories through intelligent packaging solutions like RFID have come through the pandemic more resiliently, and their supply chains have been more resilient because they've been able to identify where products are and then ensure that they have that connected back to the demand. And that's increasingly important for consumers. Consumers increasingly want products faster. And so how can they get that faster? E-commerce sales and online retail sales were already mentioned, grew 36%. That's a staggering amount. So how can you do that and fulfill that in a better way and a less impactful way? Reducing waste, optimizing last mile emissions. There's a number of ways in which we're seeing this happen in terms of using packaging as a connection to the consumer, and then back to the business, and then using that to drive improved decision making.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tyler. And one point that you mentioned is that consumers today, they want their products faster, and it's on the brands and the companies on how to deliver that, keeping all of these issues in mind. And speaking of consumers, we'll go to the next segment, which is consumer products or consumer goods, where probably the companies in this market, they want to really deliver that customer experience to their end consumers, which probably is true for all industries. But again, looking towards you, Tyler, in your role, you've been working with a lot of these top brands. And when we speak about consumer markets, P&Gs, Unilevers, they are the ones who come to mind, who are really doing IP, leading from the front. So for you, if I were to ask you that, which are the main application areas for IP in consumer markets? What is the need, and which are some of these case studies that the industry can learn from?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest opportunities right now is really just around packaging, the amount of packaging we have. What are some of the legislations that are happening around, single-use packaging directives that are out there? How does that translate into consumer trends? The push for more refillable, reusable packaging. Really, it starts with how do we create more circularity within our packaging? We've only recycled a fraction of the plastic packaging in the US since 1950. In order to create the circular economy around packaging, specifically to the consumer goods industry, we really need to think about preventing waste being created in the first place, using elimination, reusing solutions to curb growth, and really the total amount of packaging that needs to be circulated. So it's a kind of gradual decoupling of economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. So designing that out. And so there's a number of ways in which we're seeing that I'll talk about. two most common ones are really on refillable, reusable packaging, as well as increasing the collection and then the sortation. So starting with that first one, when you think about, keeping packaging in circulation longer, there's a number of ways. If you look at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation definition, it's about creating packaging that can be circular, creating the network that supports that, and then ultimately, ensuring compliance that happens. And all three of those things really need to happen. And we've seen a breakdown of those areas where that hasn't happened. So even if you have a great package that's not designed for circularity, if you don't focus on the other two, it won't happen. So you're seeing investment happen in curbside recycling here in the US, where we have roughly half of Americans don't have access to that. And it's also another point about educating consumers around to understand the recycling process, know what their product is going to be recycled. And then also, if you're able to do that, in the neighborhood of 80% actually are more inclined to recycle, versus 50% that they don't know how to recycle it. They end up not recycling it. So we're seeing the intelligent label and intelligent packaging solutions kind of be the foil that really makes this happen, because you really need to first connect the product to the consumer, and the consumer would say, okay, this is what happens with it. You also need to connect back to the system to say, okay, once it's been collected, I need to sort it. So how can you improve that? So if we think about sorting products, we're a participant on Procter & Gamble's Holy Grail, which is effectively a partnership to drive next stage development for intelligent waste sorting. So it moves one step closer to precision identification and sorting of plastic packages, and it has really a strong potential to revolutionize the sorting and packaging process of plastic packaging. So it's really foundational when you think about how can we increase that number of packages from 9% in the US to a number that's much greater. And we're even looking at alternative technologies that are out there. We have a partner in the UK where we participated on a feasibility study where we gave unique digital identities to facilitate the tracking and separation of packaging waste in a MRF, or a materials recovery facility. So it looked at how to use NFC to increase the sorting accuracy of plastic waste within a material recovery facility. After doing an initial damage conditioning to reflect a typical recycling process, we found that we were able to demonstrate that 79% of items were successfully read through an array of NFC readers, and then of that, 100% were identified, and so they were able to be sorted to correct material type and BIM from initial study. So really, we think this is a foundational ability when you look at packaging as no longer being a negative, but actually using the intelligent packaging to help make things circular and closing the loop. The other big opportunity is really around reusable and refillable packaging. So if you look at, the fact that we're moving from single-use packaging to more refillable, reusable packaging, we have a massive delta between what's actually out in the market currently at less than 2%. So clearly, we need a lot of solutions that help this, and intelligent packaging, I think, is really going to be foundational to making that happen. And intelligent packaging, in terms of a reusable scheme, there are a lot of questions to answer. So where are the reusable containers going to go? Who's going to store them? Who's going to wash them? Who's going to monitor them, receive them? Who's going to take the inventory? Who's going to manage the labor and all these conditions? And then ultimately, what's the carbon footprint of all? An intelligent packaging solution can have to enable all of that logistics to happen, really enable the process. We've worked with a company in the UK called Reynolds that did 100% traceable trays for a pilot. And so they saw that their inventory accuracy greatly improved. They had a 20% increase in process efficiency, and they had a 20% increase in store delivery accuracy, and no payment issues, and they had no unknown tray losses. So things like returnable transport items such as a reusable carton here or reusable tray, we're starting to really see get adopted. And there's a big benefit around sustainability for that, obviously. We've also worked with companies that are more core in the consumer space with a startup down in South America called Allegramo, which basically uses a three-pillar system around reusable packaging to deploy around like the consumer packaged goods space. So first they use a reusable smart container that contains an RFID chip. The second is an app where consumers can request the purchase of a product, and then manage the recharges, manage their virtual wallet, so connecting it to the consumer, and then the reordering patterns. And the third is a new door-to-door distribution system that basically takes vehicles equipped with supply pumps and RFID reader and allows the packaging to be refilled by the consumer, and then also connect back to the app. And the benefits that you have with this are pretty staggering. In the France, you have grocery retailer Carrefour that found that if a shopper was to refill a 154-gram bottle 10 times over a year, this would prevent the purchase of around 55 grams of single-use plastic, and thereby reducing waste by about 70%. And they're doing this through an intelligent packaging solution with RFID. So I think if you look at all that together, we have a big scope around what we can do with the consumer packaged goods industry. And we have a lot of legislation that's pushing us towards certain areas in terms of closing the loop, in terms of keeping products in circulation longer with reusable packaging, as well as consumer demand. And you're seeing intelligent packaging be not a negative, but obviously a positive. You think about what I mentioned earlier around solving food waste, but then also closing the loop and keeping the package in use longer, keeping the primary item in use longer. So I think it's really exciting to see the potential of where we're going to go here, and I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, and like you rightly said, we are just getting started, because recycling, reusable, all of this has been in the agenda for enterprises for a long time. But what you said in the beginning, that we haven't even scratched the surface here when it comes to recycling plastics globally.
Right.
So of course the market is huge, the scope is huge for IP, and I'm looking towards Yash now. Yash, you've been conducting this research and surveying a lot of these consumer products companies about their adoption of IP. What, according to you, are the biggest application areas and the market potential like? Could you share your key takeaways from your research?
Well, yeah, thanks a lot, Aditi. Rightly mentioned, when we talk about the intelligent packaging revolution, not just in CPG, but across industries, immediately brands like P&G and Unilever come to your mind. Since these companies are leading from the front, because they obviously have the capital investments and are doing the right things in their R&D. But what I see today is rest of the market also catching up fast and making their presence count in intelligent packaging solutions. And it is important to note that in CPG, the real reason for adoption of intelligent packaging comes out as an amalgamation of 3 to 4 crucial factors. Those are consumer engagement, brand positioning, and circular economy. Brands are seeing intelligent packaging enabling the next consumer experience level, getting them closer to their consumers for that hyper-personalized experience. So for now, we can say for CPG, the adoption curve of intelligent packaging is still in the embryonic stage. However, there are some factors, some aspects which are providing a sound thrust to the overall implementation scale. And they say, better late than never. Similar is the case of intelligent packaging across CPG. So moving ahead, let us have a quick look at which are the propelling factors of intelligent packaging across whole of the consumer products and goods domain. In a survey conducted by Future Market Insights across key CPG companies, 4 out of 5, yes, you heard it right, 4 out of 5 have agreed to the fact that yes, they are thinking to implement intelligent packaging on the likes of strong customer connection and having a robust brand positioning. On such lines, the companies now have started thinking on the secondary aspect, that is innovative packaging, a factor that was never focused on as all the eyes were totally towards product aesthetics. On the other side, all the companies mentioned that yes, they would be targeting customer engagement, but also will be keeping the sustainability goals at the forefront. Currently, you can see over the screen as the penetration of IP in CPG is less than 1%, but I'm sure these companies, along with the support of complete supply chain, will surely make it up to at least 2.5% by the end of this decade. Now, moving on to the next slide. So, who are the top brands, companies that have made their products talking with intelligent packaging? On the screen projections, you can see some of the top CPG companies that have had prominent use cases of intelligent packaging. Yes, P&G, Unilever, Henkel, and Kimberly are the front runners as they already have their made presence count in intelligent packaging solutions. You can see NFC tags, RFID tags, QR codes, etc. as some of the common proven solutions across the top brands. P&G's Lennon, Fairy, and their stand towards Holy Grail have been the prime inspiration for other companies as well. Laser as bottles of herbal shampoos and conditioners have also helped the company to present a strong case in case of intelligent packaging adoption. Likewise, there are some couple of other examples as well. Degree deodorant by Unilever and focus towards connected packaging for lipstick and mascara by L'Oreal are ensuring higher degree of customer engagement. So you must be wondering, what do all the above instances have to portray? All such examples portray the fact of higher customer engagement and at the same time targeting niche segments, again, in order to have higher degree of customer engagement there. Along with all these, most of the big companies have a common goal of reducing their virgin petroleum plastics consumption by 50% over the coming decade, 50%. Therefore, yes, these are the top brands focused towards IP. However, there are a handful of other companies as well which perhaps sit on the thin line of demarcation between total sustainable packaging and intelligent packaging. On similar lines, the industry would witness nearly 8 to 10% of the total CPG brands following intelligent packaging in their products by at least moderate level of adoption. Yeah, moving on to the next slide. Now, I think we have talked enough about the companies, the applications, the use cases, the technologies, but then it becomes crucial, becomes important to have a look at the core data, and those are the real market numbers. Currently, as you can see, market value of intelligent packaging in CPG sits at USD 4.1 billion, which is further expected to rise with a CAGR of 5.4%. So again, what does it portray? It still highlights very low standing of CPG and IP as compared to other set of industries we talked earlier. So let's take a look at what the industry has to offer CPG brands. It has to offer an enormous 2.8 billion of opportunity. Can you believe a huge 2.8 billion of opportunity? And why only the CPG brands? This particular value would be cascaded to all the players across the value chain as well. On the basis of raw material suppliers, you may have BASF, Eastman, Arkema, etc., the real packaging solution providers, and perhaps channel partners as well. So, how to study this wide pool of opportunities? What will be the top push factors for this? Obviously, the brand builders. However, the emerging brands would also account nearly 20% of the total 2.8 billion opportunity. Again, segment providing thrust would be cosmetics and personal care, and that too across North America and Europe. Moving on to the next slide, we have talked so much again about the current standing of CPG over the IPO adoption curve and possibly all the prominent factors which would rather provide tailwinds to the technology. However, looking towards the industry from market lens, there are a few factors selected by the packaging team of Future Market Insights in accordance with the future roadmap of intelligent packaging in consumer products and goods. So let me summarize this in 5 quick pointers for you. The very first is the transition phase. As everyone knows, the real value gets added into an industry on the back of strong initiatives from the market actors. It's always about the heroes that provide a real push. That is the top CPG brands. It is believed that of the total CPG companies' R&D budget for packaging, nearly 18.9% will be totally towards intelligent packaging and identifying prominent use cases. If this unfolds the manner we have anticipated, then you could see a massive shift towards CPG packaging, and possibly the penetration of CPG in total packaging could increase to a whopping 2.5% by the end of 2031. The second important aspect is to consider, is to have a know-how about who would be the brands. We have seen that yes, it will be the top CPG companies who would be holding the charge for this enormous transition. However, it's again vital to check on who will be the top faces making this dream turn into a reality. Will it be the tier 1 players? I believe there are no prizes for guessing. Yes, these top companies are already on the verge of bringing about a revolution in overall CPG. So why not the packaging of those? These companies do have their set targets till 2030, and possibly they will be doing this one thing altogether very swiftly. With cash reserves, sound R&D segments, and a strong distribution loop, these companies will surely hold the pole position for increasing intelligent packaging in CPG. Next in line are obviously tier 2 companies that would be competing on the likes of strong collaborations and likewise strategies in order to have strong technologies, robust distribution channel, and ultimately high degree of customer engagement. It is further anticipated that these players could eventually account for 20% of the overall opportunity garnished by IP technology for CPG. The third again would be important to know about which would be the segments. Which probable segments of CPG would have early mover advantage? It's crucial to consider since we are talking about CPG, consumer products and goods, an industry which has its reach way beyond our imagination. Thus, to simplify this and make things more realistic, cosmetic and beauty will hold the fort as this particular segment is expected to account for nearly 40% of the total IP in CPG by 2031. Rigorous initiatives by top companies in order to introduce intelligent packaging in their beauty products can be thought of as the ultimate driving force behind such huge growth. Further, the apparel and footwear would be next in line, which could see mass implementation of intelligent packaging. We have already seen some of the great initiatives such as Fine Focus from Adidas and a few more from Nike as well, which are presenting a strong IP adoption case, and that too in the right direction. Next would be regions. Yes, as everyone knows, North America and Europe being at the forefront again will lead the way going forward. Of all the important four factors, if you ask me what would be the ultimate bottom line of intelligent packaging in consumer products, so then yes, the brand builders and other pool of players are on the right track, and perhaps we could bring IP in the mainstream for CPG. Yes, they'll work closely for achieving the desired customer engagement levels and brand positioning. However, this has to be compatible with what has been their goal since Genesis, and that is sustainability and circular economy. Hence, I believe we could be seeing an altogether different environment for CPG packaging in the coming decade on the back of a proper balance between consumer sentiments and social sentiments.
Great, thanks for that, Yash. And I really like how you summarize this one slide into, what is the transition phase, who are the brands who will lead, and what the market looks like in future. So one thing which is apparent across all the industries and all the slides is that there is immense market potential. There is immense scope for IP. Firms are making the right investments in R&D, in innovations, in IP. But what I really want to know, and the question is towards you, Tyler. What does it take to, let's say, what are the critical success factors in this market? What does it take to win in this market? If you could just say a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's a good segue from Yash, and I really appreciate, and I think that really resonated with me. I think there's a number of drivers with you look at why there's critical success factors. I think fundamentally, you have consumers asking for brands that have to be more sustainable. They're looking for more sustainable solutions. They're willing to pay more for it. So for me, it's about being able to provide solutions back to the consumers that's kind of meeting their needs. You'll have a sales uplift there, willing to pay more. And it's also about creating value. And so obviously we spoke at length around this, but I think we're really seeing the intersection between technology and really sustainability. And technology is fundamentally transforming business models, and it's introducing entirely new industries, efforts to accelerate global decarbonization. And to me, intelligent packaging is about digitization. And it's here now, and it's a question about adoption and how can brands and retailers embed sustainability early in really product design. CEOs are already saying that digital twin technology will make a significant impact on sustainability within their industry over the next 5 years. And the cost of failing to act there, I think, is missing out on really all of these opportunities in terms of reducing your environmental impact, engaging your consumers, creating value. The cost of net zero transition, we hear the topic of climate talked about all the time now, is a very high cost at 9.2 trillion, which sounds high, but when you consider the cost of not doing that is even higher. And there are solutions out there that exist from an intelligent packaging solution. RFID has been determined to be the #1 technology to provide transparency over the next 5 years. And IoT technology above and beyond that is still 2 to 5 years from transformational impact. So I think we're still just seeing this ramp up of intelligent packaging solutions. But I think if you bring together what's driving it in terms of the consumer demand, being able to reduce environmental impact, create value for your consumers, your stakeholders, you're really seeing a critical success factor for brands that are doing that well. And we've talked about great examples throughout the course of this webinar where there's examples to learn from where brands are doing it, where they're creating value. They're also reducing the environmental impact. They're enabling the circular economy on top of that.
Yeah, and you, Tyler, are you Okay, yeah, sorry. I think it's my connection that sometimes I'm just seeing that the screen is freezing. So you mentioned about RFID now and also before that it's really in focus. And we have a question from one of our audience. We just have time for one more question, so I'll just quickly take that. So it's from Alexander, who says that RFID has a high infrastructure cost. Have companies considered any other technology like BLE or any others? So is that something that you can take up?
Sure. So I think, yeah, RFID, I think to me, it's about total cost of ownership. So, amortizing the infrastructure costs, if you look at fixed costs versus, non-fixed costs in terms of, what is the total cost of ownership? The cost of RFID has come down considerably over the last decade or so. We're certainly seeing a blend of technologies come into play here. You have IoT, that's been widely adopted now across the space, and now followed by AI. But all of these really need things like RFID to be this data gathering, to feed in this information, to be the connection back to the physical product, to create a connected product, if you will. And so that intelligent packaging, I think you're seeing a combination of all those, but certainly there's various applications where you're seeing impact in terms of, is it RFID? Could it be NFC? Could it be a QR code? Connecting it back to a connected product cloud. And really you're seeing, by being able to do that, you're having a result of a 1 + 1 = 3. So you're starting to see a maximization of value there.
Great, question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Tyler. And there are a few other questions. Unfortunately, we are not able to take that, but we will get back to you over an email for sure. So I just wanted to, ask you, Tyler, you are a guest speaker. Any last ending comments about what the future of sustainable technologies looks like or will look like in future?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it in that last question, but I think you'll see kind of a combination of technologies come into play, layering over top of other, things like RFID to really implement intelligent packaging, layering that in with a connected cloud. I also think, standards are something that we'll see have a greater emphasis. We're seeing that happen in certain work groups across industries like GS1, across the UN, across certain like industries like the apparel industry, Sustainable Apparel Coalition, standardizing standards or standardizing the way that we refer to products. And by doing so, now we've broken down the barriers, and so things like reducing waste and keeping products in circulation longer are really critical. Specifically as it relates to packaging, there's a big push on authentication of PCR or post-consumer resin or recycled plastics. And how can you really track that through a supply chain, ensure that it gets circled back, and then brands that have committed goals around reusable packaging or recycled packaging content, how can they now verify and authenticate that they are in fact sourcing as their feedstock a package or a plastic, as an example, that is recycled? And so it takes standards for the barrier to drop. And so things like Procter & Gamble's Holy Grail, as I mentioned, it's been helpful in bringing together differing groups across the packaging and then the CPG and the F&B space to really collaborate to solve these macro issues. And so I think you'll see greater collaboration, less competition in order to solve these macro problems around sustainability.
Great. Well, wonderful. That's a very strong closing statement, Tyler. Thank you so much for that. We've come to the end of our 1 hour session. We've had a very attentive audience. Thank you for joining in, and thank you for your questions. And of course, thanks to our speakers for their time. And I always want to end a session with a food for thought. But before that, just going back to what I said in the beginning, reiterating that intelligent packaging is not just the next level, it is a revolution in the making, because it has the power to transform our economy. And given the the disruptions that are happening in technology, the various innovations that are coming in, and the same for packaging, it leads us to think that could Internet of Packaging be the next reality? And with that thought, I would like to end this session. It's been great moderating. It's been great hearing these insights, and I hope our audience enjoyed it too. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you again in the next session sometime very soon. Thank you so much, and have a good evening ahead or good day ahead. Bye-bye.